Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee never had a chance inside the Apollo 1 space capsule. They were burned alive, unable to escape during a routine testing prior to the scheduled 1967 launch.
It was a cold day, and I'll tell you this.
Memories of the accident invaded the mind of Henry Horn this morning. Their memories recorded for all time in a Life magazine article. Astronaut Roger Chaffee was his son-in-law. Today's explosion brought back pain that's dulled over the years. It's pain that will never go away.
When I saw on TV this morning the school teachers' little children, how involved they were in it. And of course, I thought of my two little grandchildren down there at that time. They were just about that size, and it makes you think back on it.
Henry Horn followed the news reports all day. He's had 19 years to nurse his own personal loss, but his heart went out to the families of the astronauts and the teacher who were killed in today's shuttle explosion. Henry says tragedy is something the wives and families of astronauts have to live with every day. He calls it a price of progress. Terry Cook, News 4.
11.7 billion that we have to reduce programs by in '86.
State legislators got the bad news today. Oklahoma stands to lose $30 million in federal money because of a new budget balancing law. It's called the Graham-Rudman Act, and it's going to make sure Congress is balancing the budget by 1991. It also means Oklahoma stands to lose a lot of money. A total of 50 state programs will be affected by Graham-Rudman. For example, education will lose $1.8 million this year. The Department of Human Services twice that amount, more than $4 million. Energy programs will be cut by more than $1 million over last year, and the block grant program will be slashed by an estimated $5 million.
It seems as though every source of revenue that we have continues to decline, and today we are beginning to face the fact that federal funds will begin to decline.
The cuts are scheduled to go into effect March 1st, but there's a chance Graham-Rudman might be declared unconstitutional. That question is in court right now. State legislators have mixed feelings about Graham-Rudman. On the one hand, it should help control the runaway federal deficit, but at the same time, it will make Oklahoma's budget crunch just that much worse. Peter Mays, News 4 at the state capitol.
By 8 this morning, 2 people were dead and 2 others injured at Consolidated Freightways in southeast Oklahoma City. A gunman allegedly walked into the office area of the company and shot and killed Consolidated executive James L. Ryder. Police sources say the suspect then made his way into the parking lot, where 2 other men were wounded. Gordon Allen Moore and Ansel Davis were shot but are listed in good condition. The final victim at the company was 35-year-old Carl D. Lake. He was shot to death on the loading dock. Police were also called to 1809 Northeast 20th, where 29-year-old Teresa Thomas was found in the backyard. She, too, had been gunned down. Her 6-year-old daughter, Tamika, was seriously wounded. The infant is listed in critical but stable condition. Another man was shot this morning. He was found in the trunk of a car on North Cairo in northeast Oklahoma City. He is unidentified. The search for the suspect ended suddenly. 24-year-old Cyril Wayne Ellis was arrested at this residence in Del City. He called police and said he was tired of running. He was booked on murder complaints without incident. The motive behind the killing is unknown and probably will remain a mystery for at least 24 hours. Detectives are still busy working the murder scenes.
What we're trying to do now, again, is to put the series of events together as the evidence at each one of these scenes dictates, and then, of course, to talk to the suspect following that to see if the evidence that we've gathered will support his story.
Ellis was an employee at Consolidated, and detectives will work the case from that angle. It's still not known what relation the victims have to the suspect and why the gunman traveled to 3 locations. Ellis was taken to St. Anthony's Hospital after experiencing dizzy spells earlier today, but is now back in jail. Kevin Ogle, News 4.
This is the secretary, John Ross. Shelley's running a temperature and she shouldn't be in school.
By mid-afternoon today, officials at this school checked about 25 temperatures. On Monday of this week, absentees peaked at 13% of the student body. Yes, the flu season is here, and staff members think this year it started early. But it's a seasonal problem they're used to dealing with. Their biggest problem, figuring out who's sick and who isn't.
If parents know if their children are feeling well or not, if the child's complaining, they really ought to check their temperature, and if they have a temperature, please keep them home.
What color is this? What does this need to be?
Pink.
Okay.
When the empty seats increase, educational philosophy changes somewhat. There's more emphasis on group activity and projects, less emphasis on the teaching of new ideas, ideas that would have to be repeated when absent students return. And regardless of the number of sick kids, school officials say unless the bug decides to hit a large number of faculty members, school will go on. In Edmond, Kent Boyd, News 4.
The Copper 7 has been the country's most popular IUD. The G.D. Searle Company announced today it is withdrawing the Copper 7 and Tatum T IUDs from the U.S. market. A company spokesman claims the withdrawal decision was strictly economic.
First, we face substantial costs in defending unwarranted product litigation. And second, liability insurance is virtually unavailable.
Searle says that in 1985, its total IUD sales came to $11 million, while it spent $1 million successfully defending itself in one lawsuit. A total of 775 lawsuits have been filed against Searle, claiming the IUDs caused infection or sterility in women who used them.
I think over the long run, women are going to be the one that will suffer.
Oklahoma City gynecologist Dr. Maylee Barkey says she has routinely prescribed the Copper 7 for her patients for years.
IUD carries risk, just like everything else. There isn't a birth control method that's 100% safe and 100% effective. The chance of infection with IUD is real, but it still only occurs to a small percentage of women.
Dr. Barkey says the withdrawal of the Copper 7 leaves her with only one brand of intrauterine device to prescribe for her Oklahoma City patients. Scott Wallace, News 4.
Programs. We think people in Oklahoma will do that. We think that they will buy lottery tickets, particularly if they know that the proceeds are going to go to support education and going to support economic development in some of these social programs.
That's the philosophy of COOL, Coalition of Oklahomans for a Lottery. They announced today they would push for a lottery to help ease the state's budget crunch. Past efforts to generate support in the legislature for such an issue have hit dead ends. But this group says now is the time.
Oklahoma's in a deep economic crisis. People simply cannot pay any more taxes, or they're unwilling to. There has to be an alternative source of revenue in the state, and we think that they're going to have to realize that in order to support poor people, they're going to have to support a lottery.
The larger winnings is less.
State Senator Bill Dawson introduced a lottery bill last year, but COOL wants to amend his measure to earmark the proceeds. Under their plan, 45% of the proceeds will be returned to players as winnings. 15% would be used for administration of the game, and 40% would go to the state's general fund. But that 40% in the general fund would be earmarked even further, with half going to education, 15% for economic development in the state, 15% for drug and alcohol rehabilitation and other health care, and 5% each for senior citizens and handicap projects, civil legal services, child support enforcement, and low-income child care.
Channel 9 brings you the official winning number in the Illinois State Lottery's daily game.
Cool points to successful lotteries in other states and estimates Oklahoma could reap over $100 million in new revenues. The group says it has enough advocacy groups to push the issue through on a grassroots level and bring it to a vote on the November ballot. Storm Smith, News 4.
Valentine's Day, a time of year when a man's fancy turns to love. But love doesn't come cheap. Just ask your favorite florist. Each year, Valentine's Day seems to take a bigger bite out of our wallet. But if you have your heart set on sending your sweetie some long stems, consider the investment like any other major purchase. Shop around. Florists are expected to charge anywhere from $40 to $70 for a dozen red roses this season. One of the reasons for the high price tag is some florists are getting charged more themselves.
I've talked to a lot of the growers and the people from the West Coast, and they said a lot of the prices on the roses will be up as much as 50%, and even the local wholesalers have upped their prices 50%.
What's that going to do to your prices?
Well, we're going to try to hold ours the same because we buy ours right from a grower in Oregon, and he holds his prices to us the same the year round, so we'll be able to hold ours the same.
Of course, there are alternatives to the traditional fare.
Oh, Maxine, how are we?
Well, I'm fine.
Well, yes, you are. You're perfect to me.
Nothing can brighten a person's day like a singing balloon delivery man and his cute girlfriend. There are a whole slew of companies that offer balloon deliveries, singing telegrams, and even belly dancing well-wishers to celebrate this holiday. The service varies in price, but 20 minutes of fun at the office will usually cost less than $50. And what's it like to be on the receiving end of a fantasygram?
It's very surprising. It's very nice and very delightful. I'm utterly surprised. Y'all didn't clue me in on this.
These are all, if you would, companies that have a professional feel about them. In other words, they are a dance group. They want to perform and dance for the Oklahoma community. They want to reach outside of the Oklahoma community and tour possibly a 6-state area.
Paying tuition at the college of your choice could become tougher under the president's proposed budget cuts for fiscal 1987. Reagan is calling for an end to all federal aid for 1 million college students. Those needing federal assistance will go through a more intense evaluation as to whether there really is a need for money, and interest-free loans would be a thing of the past. Here at Central State University, 1/3 of those enrolled receive some kind of financial help. The cutbacks will make a difference.
I feel that education's important, and had it not been for, financial assistance, I wouldn't be able to attend school right now.
Mildred Hillman, a single parent, drives 160 miles a day to and from school to get her education. She says becoming a teacher is her dream.
And if I didn't have federal assistance, I really don't think that I would be able to do it in in 4 years' time. It might take me a while, and who knows what happens on down the road.
Still, school officials are remaining optimistic that the loss of some financial aid won't have a drastic effect on students.
If federal funds are cut, I think alternative resources may come forth at that time.
Meaning?
Through various foundations or scholarship funds.
Ironically, this has been the best year on record for enrollment at Central State University. Whether that record continues to hold through proposed financial cutbacks remains to be seen. Ann Nyberg, News 4.
Winter weather is hard on streets. This is an example, winter 1984, and a freeze that caused havoc for drivers and for city street crews who had to deal with the aftermath. It's time-consuming and costly to repair roads during the winter, roads that are ruined by snow, ice, sand, and salt. This winter, however, street crews have not had to deal with harsh conditions. In fact, the weather has been so mild that street repairs are up in Oklahoma City by 160%. City officials say the streets are in as good a shape as possible for this time of year. But the extra work means extra money has been spent, money that is in short supply, money that the street department will need later this year.
We've been spending money that we might otherwise be using on snow removal for street maintenance, and that's appropriate.
City Manager Scott Johnson says money will be needed this spring for projects like street cleaning and curb repair. It might not be available now due to the increased workload this winter, but he says that's one problem the city can live with.
The object is to keep the streets in good repair, and if we just said, well, this isn't the time of the year to be filling potholes, we do that in March and April, then all during this period of time the pothole would be getting larger.
The repair frenzy will continue in Oklahoma City as long as the weather holds. The revenue shortage will have to be dealt with in the future, but for now, city street crews have the green light, and they will continue to work as long as the funding is available. Kevin Ogle, News 4.
The officers at that point saw the subject with the gun in his hand. Both officers fired at least one shot. As I understand it, the subject was struck. I don't know how many times he's been taken to Oklahoma Memorial Hospital.
Mike Siner, hardly a household name around Washington until now, emerged from the courthouse minutes after the decision came down.
We are obviously very pleased with today's decision. I think it proves that the Constitution is working.
A three-judge panel ruled the Graham-Rudman bill unconstitutionally gives the president and appointed officials formal power to amend or repeal legislation that was lawfully passed.
None of us who stand here are against the process of trying to move towards a balanced budget. Our point from the very beginning was that responsibility is in the hands of elected officials and not from a group of faceless bureaucrats.
Texas Senator Phil Gramm, the bill's chief sponsor, thinks Congress will still feel pressured into balancing the budget.
I think either house of Congress, after it was adopted by both houses and by the majority of both parties, I think either house is going to be very loath to simply say, we wrote the law and we went back home and we said we'd address the issue, but we didn't do it. So, is it weaker? Yes. Is it still a very strong tool? Yes.
The court ruling cuts out what many consider to be the heart of Graham-Rudman, the automatic spending reductions that were scheduled to begin the 1st of next month. The case first must be reviewed by the Supreme Court, and that's not likely to happen until Graham-Rudman's initial impact is already being felt. Scott Libben, News 4, Washington. Tease for KTVY.
That new 800,000 square foot center will provide all the housing, support, and training in one location for more than 15,000 new Postal Service employees each year. They'll come from all over the country to Norman to learn how to repair and operate everything from Jeeps to letter sorting computers, all under one roof. About 100 people came to the OU Student Union today to applaud the efforts of the Norman Chamber, the Postal Service, and the state's congressional delegation for keeping the center in Norman.
This is a technology training center, and that's why it's important for all of Oklahoma. It's technology we're talking about, training people to automate, to move forward, to have progress in making the Postal Service more efficient, more productive, and again, the bottom line is to serve all Americans.
Okay, folks, we're making it a good load here. Oh, okay.
The groundbreaking today starts construction on the $63 million facility just south of Norman. Completion is scheduled for the fall of 1986. Storm Smith, News 4, Norman.
Looking out the front door of a Northwest Oklahoma City department store, you don't need to have a degree in meteorology to know that this is the dead of winter.
This new one we got in, they've already taken back off. The gray one, like this one.
But while the calendar reads February, the clerks in most Oklahoma City retail stores are setting up displays that hint of the warm summer days of June. Patio furniture, air conditioners, and ceiling fans dominate the floor in this big-name department store. But if you want tire chains or a wide selection of winter apparel, prepare to shop elsewhere.
No, I always start getting spring merchandise the end of January every year. And if you want a winter coat, you come in August.
The clothing stores are stocking pastels, not parkas. And this store is not the exception. In fact, most outlets carry spring merchandise now. Short-sleeve shirts and wild print summer garb adorn most mannequins this month. And the only customers complaining are the ones without a warm jacket. It seems many want to think summer right now.
Well, everybody's getting tired of buying for the winter. What else are they going to do? They're already prepared to jump into the summertime and think about that for a while. I'm ready to think about it, that's for sure.
The information that we have is that it was delivered or distributed in 31 states east of the Mississippi River. So right now, we're taking the position that we don't have any in Oklahoma.
The news is not good. The news is worse than good. It is traumatic. This Thursday, the Equalization Board will meet for the second time as required for law, and we have a projected downturn of $467 million.
In just a few months, Oklahoma's budget problems have grown larger than anyone predicted. As Governor Nye announced the bad news today, he warned agency officials that they must reduce spending by up to 17%. For many, that means laying off employees. For all, it means reducing programs or cutting them altogether. Nye also ordered a widespread freeze in state spending. Effective immediately, all hiring will be stopped until further notice. A purchasing freeze is also underway, allowing money only for critical needs. Nye also ordered a freeze on out-of-state travel. In the next few weeks, state leaders will get together and figure out where to go from here.
You have to realize that any budget proposal that has previously been made was based upon figures that were considered to be correct at the time, and based upon the information were correct, that in today's world, they're incorrect.
Today's world is far different from the boom days of the early 80s. That's when Oklahoma was riding high on rising oil prices. The future looked bright back then. Oklahoma had a surplus, not a shortfall. But even 4 years ago, lawmakers knew the well could one day run dry.
That day when these funds will no longer be coming in as a result of gross production tax will make it necessary that we fund the operations of state government with the available revenues coming in which our tax base produces. We can at least save a portion of this great wealth now so that we will have it after the decline comes, and it will come.
The shortfall is a fact now. The budget cuts are here. The boom is over.
How hard it's blowing. It's that kind of guesstimate, if you would. We'll find out if they have good documentation on that. We can turn that around. It's going to have to make some changes in the federal law. You know, if the president is bound and determined to keep his tax reform bill revenue neutral, I would suggest to him that maybe an oil import fee instead of eliminating the intangible drilling cost deduction and depletion allowance, you know, that would be a positive step for the state of Oklahoma.
And that is his condition as you observe it today. Is that
questions? First of all,
status is based on your experience and training.
Influences tardive dyskinesia in any beneficial or no, I don't think this is entirely predictable. Okay. It can only get worse.
Okay. Correctional Institute, and while he was a patient at Eastern State Hospital of Anita, did you not?
Yes, sir. Knowledge of tardive dyskinesia runs just into the opposite. It is a very, very malignant.
Let's see now. Yeah. Great. I mean, good guy, good coach. Did you think so?
Yeah.
That was early.
They play OU and OSU again, and they play OU again.
We believe that the report draws conclusions that perhaps will result in further investigation. We're just not sure at this point in time. But the allegations are abuse and misuse of public funds, in particular accounts and funds at Rose State College. And there is some substantiation in this report of what appears to be some real problems.